Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Andrea Gonzalez with Trellis Strategies, and we are really excited to share with you data from our Student Financial Wellness Survey results for online learners. And we have two of our research team members here today presenting, and I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. I'm Carla Fletcher, Principal Research Associate on the team, and Anthony.
And I'm Anthony Schuette. I'm a Research Associate on the Trellis team.
Great. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. Welcome all. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us today to talk about student wellness, specifically for students enrolled in online-only college programs. For many learners, online education is not simply a preference, it's a necessity. Online-only students are more likely to be working adults, caregivers, or parents, or just individuals balancing education alongside significant financial and personal responsibilities. While online learning can offer flexibility and access, it does not eliminate the financial pressures of college. Today's online students are navigating tuition and fees, living expenses, debt decisions, maybe sometimes unpredictable income, and often without those campus supports or resources that traditional place-based students may rely on. Financial stress doesn't just affect their bank accounts, it shapes enrollment decisions, persistence, academic performance, and ultimately whether these students are able to complete their programs. So in this webinar, we'll explore what financial wellness looks like for online-only students and how institutions can better support these students so they can persist, complete, and thrive. So about us, in case some of you are new to us, we are Trellis Strategies. We are a nonprofit research firm focused on advancing post-secondary education and strengthening the workforce. Since launching our survey shop back in 2018, we've surveyed over 9 million students, and we have been active in higher education research for over 4 decades beyond survey research. So one of our largest projects is the Student Financial Wellness Survey. This survey is a self-reported online survey that documents the financial well-being and student success indicators of currently enrolled post-secondary students nationwide. Over the past 7 years, we've implemented this survey at institutions across the country at what we're calling place-based institutions for the sake of this presentation, although there are certainly students enrolled in online-only classes at those institutions. Last spring in 2025, we had our inaugural implementation of the survey to students enrolled in online-only programs at 3 large national online universities using a slightly modified version of our standard survey. So through these surveys, both the place-based and the online-only, our team has deepened our understanding of student wellness issues, particularly their impact on student success, the perceived value of education, and student support in higher education. Colleges and universities have used the survey results to do things like raise funds, develop programs, assess initiatives, and affirm the importance of supporting their students. You can, on the next slide here, find the findings that we're going to go through today from the spring online-only survey. It's out on our website in the Research Hub, and Andrea has linked to it in the chat, and it can be reached directly with this QR code. So, and I believe you'll get a recording of this as well, so you'll be able to reach this a number of different ways if you don't capture it right now. So on the survey metrics, in the middle column here is the spring 2025 survey for the online cohort. We received more than 16,000 responses. We largely focus on just these online-only students in the report and in the presentation, but we do have some comparisons to the fall 2024 place-based students, which are those who are taking only in-person or at least some in-person classes during that fall 2024 semester. And you can see there were more than 32,000 respondents in that place-based comparison group. So the results for the rest of this presentation are broken out into 3 sections: financial security, student personas and perceptions, and student well-being. And I'm going to turn things over to Anthony to go through the first 2 sections, and then I'll be back for the last one. And I'll also talk about some implications for findings after that. So with that, go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. So we're going to start by talking about financial security among these online students. So our online students displayed several noteworthy characteristics compared to those place-based students that Carla was mentioning that are our usual SFWS respondents. We'll highlight several of those differences today. And then, as Carla said, the full report will point out several others, so I would encourage you to check that out as well. Many online students expressed financial difficulties while enrolled in their post-secondary education. 72% of respondents to the survey experienced such difficulties or challenges, and 45% said that they had difficulty concentrating on schoolwork because of their financial situation. Most of our respondents completed the FAFSA, 87% having reported doing so, or having someone else do it on their behalf. 12% said that they did not, and 1% didn't know if they completed the FAFSA. Among those who didn't, a variety of reasons contributed to their decision not to complete the FAFSA. And a few of the notable ones are 37% said that they didn't think they would be eligible for financial aid. 24% said that they could afford to go to school without that aid. 22% didn't want the possibility of taking on debt. And 33% did not complete the FAFSA for some other reason than we listed. Beyond the FAFSA, when we're talking about paying for school, we also saw that these online students were using a unique array of funding sources to pay for their school. These students relied on common sources like loans, Pell Grants, and scholarships, but they also relied heavily on their current income and other employer support, as well as personal savings and credit cards, which are things that we didn't see as often with those place-based respondents. So you can see, for example, we have 71% taking out personal student loans, 65% with Pell Grants or other grants contributing, and then we also see 36% using their current income, 18% using personal savings, and then 12% each on support from employer, scholarships, and credit cards. So furthermore, we saw that online respondents used fewer total sources to pay for college than we saw from our place-based respondents in the fall 2024 Student Financial Wellness Survey. Online students used an average of 2.4 of these resources to pay for school, compared to an average of 3 among our place-based respondents, which highlights the importance of each of these individual sources, particularly those employment and savings ones, to a student's education. These students also had financial challenges outside of just paying for school. Many respondents noted that they would have trouble getting $500 in cash or credit in order to meet an unexpected need. Only 27% of students answered no when asked if they would have trouble coming up with that amount of money, highlighting just how fragile many of these financial situations for these students really are. Similarly, a large contingent of these students frequently ran out of money, with 78% of respondents having run out of money at least once during the year. So you can see 22% never ran out of money in 2024, 24% ran out 1 to 3 times, 23% ran out 4 to 7 times, and then the largest group of respondents ran out of money 8 or more times, with nearly a third of our respondents having done so. To help ease the stress on their finances, some students utilized public assistance. So we can see some commonly used forms of assistance were medical assistance, with a third of students having done so. 27% used food assistance, 10% used utility assistance, and then we see housing, unemployment, and childcare at that 6% mark or lower in terms of public assistance utilization. Another way students eased short-term financial stress was through borrowing. 55% of respondents reported borrowing money from family or friends in 2024. That theme continues in that students didn't just borrow from sources close to them. Many students also utilized credit cards and other risky sources like buy now, pay later services and payday or auto title loans. Online students utilized these lending sources much more often than did their place-based counterparts in fall 2024. So just to highlight a few things, one, Buy now, pay later services in particular have really exploded in these past few years, and they've become so much more available, especially in online environments. Research is starting to emerge showing some of the pitfalls of some of these services, which I would just add aren't necessarily limited to just a retail shopping environment. Buy now, pay later has been shown to incentivize an unsustainable level of spending that can result in users having to cut down on spending on essentials. 2 in 5 of our online respondents used buy now, pay later in 2024, which is far more than did so among our place-based students, which was right around a quarter of students. It's also worth pointing out that payday and auto title loans were very popular among this group too. 21% of these students used either a payday or auto title loan, compared to just 10% of our 2024 place-based learners. These loans often come attached with large interest rates that can lead to a cycle of lending. We also saw on that previous slide that online students frequently used credit cards, with 67% of respondents having done so. Among that group, 68% said that they pay their credit card bill on time each month. However, only 22% said that they fully pay off their card balance each month, meaning that many students may be accruing interest on any unpaid balances from previous months and receiving fees as a result. Many students use their credit cards to pay for basic necessities like food, transportation, or housing, with 87% of credit card users having done so in the past 12 months. This all highlights these students' reliance on forms of short-term and month-to-month credit. So now we've established that some of these financial tendencies among respondents to the online student financial wellness survey have been somewhat concerning, especially with respect to borrowing. Despite that, we actually saw that many online students demonstrated really solid financial knowledge, which was a really interesting finding for all of us, given what we've just mentioned. The Student Financial Wellness Survey asks students 3 financial knowledge questions. And what we saw is that despite their varied utilization of credit products, online students actually slightly outperformed place-based respondents from fall 2024 on these questions. So you can see that compared to fall 2024, where 21% of respondents got 0 questions correct, only 14% of our online students got 0 questions correct on the financial knowledge section. Conversely, 29% got 2 questions correct, and 38% got 3 questions correct, both of which eclipsed those place-based learners. Beyond just demonstrating their knowledge through our financial knowledge questions, online students were also generally confident in their financial management skills. 72% of students agreed or strongly agreed that they knew how to keep from spending too much money. 56% said they follow some sort of weekly or monthly budget, and 65% also said that they know where to find the advice they need to make decisions involving money. Some of this came from institutional voices in terms of help from various sources in managing finances. In talking about their financial struggles, many students turn to financial aid advisors, academic advisors, and other institutional supports. You can see that 56% of these respondents spoke with a financial aid advisor, 56% spoke with an academic advisor, 23% spoke with an admission representative, but then we also see that 27% did not speak with any of these individuals. As far as debt goes, students expressed concerns about their debt and were concerned about their ability to repay their debt. 52% of students who borrowed loans said they had more student loan debt than expected at that point. 73% of students with loans expressed low confidence in their ability to repay their debt. This feeling of repayment skepticism translated when we asked students about their total accumulated debt and the extent to which that debt was manageable. Nearly 40% of respondents disagreed that their total amount of debt was manageable, which shows just how important non-education related debt was to their overall financial picture. And that's in addition to those education related debts. So now we've established some of the financial characteristics of these students, but these online students also look different than traditional college students beyond just who they are in the classroom or with respect to their education and finances. So let's take a look at some of those other considerations as well. Among respondents to the Student Financial Wellness Survey, most students were workers in addition to being students. 74% of students reported working for pay. These students also generally worked long hours, with 73% of working respondents reporting working 40 or more hours per week. 17% reported working 20 to 39 hours per week, and only 9% worked less than 20 hours per week. A significant contingent of these students also worked more than one job, where you can see that 20% worked 2 jobs and 2% worked 3 jobs. Importantly, these students weren't working simply just to pay for their school. Only 25% of students actually said that the main reason that they work is to pay for school. These students were instead primarily doing so for reasons outside of their education, and we'll get more into this in just a second. These students also self-defined themselves as workers, then students, showing their prioritization of these two responsibilities and roles. 71% of students who worked considered themselves workers who go to school rather than students who work. In addition to these work responsibilities, many students were also parents. 54% of students reported being a parent, and 18% reported being a caregiver or legal guardian to other dependents. Online respondents also noted just how important it was to them to financially support their families while they were enrolled. Here, online students broke from our traditional place-based college students. 71% of online learners said it was important to them that they financially support their family while they're in college, compared to 38% of place-based 2024 learners. These online students often noted their financial obligations to their partners and children, where you can see 30% said that they provide financial support for their spouse, 52% said they provide support for a child or children, 16% for parents or guardians, and 16% for other family members. So now we've talked about work and parenting, but one really important takeaway from the data is how often these online students are doing both of these things in addition to school. 40% of students reported being a parent and working while enrolled in college, and of that contingent, over half were committed to working both working and parenting more than 40 hours each week. So both of those things they were committed to more than 40 hours per week. Despite all of these challenges, both financial and otherwise, online students were generally very complimentary of their institution and saw the value in higher education and their degree. Most students agreed in the value proposition posed by college and saw the potential for higher future earnings as a result of a degree. 80% of students agreed or strongly agreed the cost of college is a good investment for their financial future, and 86% agreed or strongly agreed that a college degree will provide them with a higher quality of life. Furthermore, the overall net promoter score given to our online institutions by students was 59.1. Briefly, NPS is a method that we and others use to benchmark customer satisfaction ratings. So it asks a student basically how likely they are to recommend their school to a potential student. A score greater than 0 is generally considered good, and our highest performers are generally between 50 and 80. So our online schools here were solidly within that excellent range. Just as a comparison, among the contingent of our 2024 Student Financial Wellness Survey respondents that were enrolled in person or hybrid, That NPS was 14.5, so quite a notable difference there. With all that said, I'll turn it over to Carla to talk about student well-being.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. So just as I start this last section here, I want to encourage people to pop questions into the Q&A if you have some, and we can get to that at the end of the presentation here. We'll certainly have time. So ensuring that students have consistent access to essential resources such as nutritious food, stable housing, financial support, childcare, dependable transportation, mental health services, all of this is critical to their success. Research consistently demonstrates that students whose basic needs are met perform better academically than those who face shortages or instability. Despite efforts by higher education institutions to expand support, many students still struggle to obtain food, housing, healthcare, and other fundamental resources. In online and virtual learning environments, identifying the full scope of students' basic needs challenges and creating effective systems to connect them with support can be even more difficult. So let's start by looking at food security. Reliable access to healthy food is essential for overall well-being. Food insecurity remains common on college and university campuses, with nearly 1 in 4 students experiencing it, according to federal data. And then in voluntary surveys, like the Student Financial Wellness Survey, we often see even higher rates. In our online survey conducted in spring of 2025, 20% of respondents reported low food security, and 27% reported very low food security within the past 30 days at the time that they took the survey, according to the USDA food security scale that was in the survey. Despite the high level of need, only 19% of respondents reported visiting a food pantry in 2024 or early 2025. Next, with housing security, this poses a significant barrier to students' academic success, persistence, and retention. According to the 2025 online survey, 58% of respondents experienced housing insecurity in the 12 months prior to the survey, and that's also using a scale. So as a part of that scale, we see that many students struggled with housing-related expenses. 41% had difficulty paying bills, 12% lived in overcrowded conditions, and 20% moved in with others due to financial hardship, just to name a few of the items on the scale. And then homelessness is the most severe form of housing insecurity. Overall, given the responses to the scale, 19% of our online learners reported experiencing homelessness in the prior 12 months. 9% explicitly self-identified as having experienced homelessness. But you can see that disconnect between the 9% and the 19% because some students experiencing some of the things in the scale don't consider themselves to have been homeless, but we know that that impacts their academics to not have a stable place to live. The most common form of homelessness was couch surfing or staying with others temporarily when you don't have your own housing. Others reported being thrown out or evicted, not knowing where they would sleep, or staying in places not meant for habitation like cars or tents. And then overall basic needs, insecurity, we see 68% of respondents experience food insecurity or housing insecurity or homelessness or more than one of those. 39% faced both food and housing insecurity, and 14% had experienced all three: food insecurity, housing insecurity, and homelessness. All right, next we'll shift to mental health. Positive mental health is essential to students' well-being, academic achievement, and overall satisfaction. In recent years, especially following the COVID-19 pandemic, mental health among young adults has declined. To better understand the impact of these challenges on college students, the Student Financial Wellness Survey, both our sort of standard place-based and the online-only versions, use validated measures to assess symptoms of major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. The survey also gathers information on students' experiences with loneliness and their awareness of available mental health support. So in the 2025 online survey, 31% of respondents reported symptoms consistent with major depressive disorder, and 42% showed signs of generalized anxiety disorder. Feelings of loneliness were also widespread. 40% of students said they felt lonely sometimes, and 12% felt lonely always. So that's over half, 52%, saying that they felt lonely sometimes or always. And that's an issue that's strongly linked to higher psychological distress and increased rates of depression and anxiety. Supporting social connection, along with providing accessible counseling and mental health services, is particularly important in online learning environments, but not all students were aware of resources that might be available to them. While 55% of respondents reported that their institution offered mental health or counseling services, 43% were not sure. So these findings highlight the need for strengthened communication and outreach to ensure that students know how to access the available support systems intended to help them thrive. And then in this next couple of slides here, we look at technology security, which is important for all students, but especially so for our online-only students. Students enrolled in fully online programs can participate in their coursework from pretty much any location, which allows them to avoid common barriers to attendance, such as unreliable transportation, weather, safety concerns, or other personal issues. But online learners face their own challenges related to consistent access. Chief among these is the need for dependable technology that allows them to engage with the courses. One essential component a student needs is a device capable of completing coursework. Nearly all respondents said that they owned a desktop or a laptop computer. Still, 14% indicated they primarily relied on a work-issued or public device, suggesting that their ability to access coursework may depend on factors like library operating hours, workplace availability, or continued employment. In practice, 9 out of 10 students primarily used a computer for their online coursework, but 6% reported using a mobile device as their main access point, and 3% relied primarily on a tablet. So it's a small but notable portion of students that depend on non-computer devices, and this underscores the importance of designing course materials and assignments that function well on mobile operating systems. And then on the next slide, the other essential technical component a student needs is a stable internet connection. Nearly all respondents, 96%, reported having reliable internet access, so that's great. Most students also did not report challenges navigating their learning management software, though 8% did agree or strongly agree that they had difficulty with it. So just something for institutions to keep in mind. All right, on this next slide here, I'm going to spend some time on it talking about some implications for practice. Findings from the 2025 online survey show that today's learners balance numerous demands on their time, energy, and financial resources. Many work long hours to support themselves and their families, often while also providing care for loved ones. Their income is essential for covering daily necessities, supporting dependents, pursuing their education, and managing debt. To succeed in higher education while navigating these responsibilities, students need flexible learning options. Respondents to the survey emphasized that online education enables them to maintain employment and meet caregiving obligations. This need for flexibility is a central theme that's reflected throughout the data. So we'll take a look at these implications, starting with the student-focused scheduling. Modern learners juggle far more than coursework, often balancing their studies with employment, childcare, transportation, and other personal responsibilities. And you saw in the data that Anthony gave that a lot of these students are working and have children. Online institutions have excelled at offering the flexibility students need by allowing them to engage with courses at times that fit their busy schedules. Continuing to expand these flexible options while also ensuring high-quality, engaging learning experiences will better support students as they manage their commitments and work toward academic success. Alleviating financial barriers. Students often encounter indirect expenses that can hinder their academic progress. Costs such as transportation, housing, and food make up a substantial share of their overall cost of attendance. Transportation alone can account for nearly 20% of expenses for commuting students. So allowing students to pursue their education remotely or through hybrid formats can help reduce these financial pressures and make post-secondary credentials more attainable. By lowering indirect costs, especially those transportation costs for those commuting students, and offering greater flexibility for work and caregiving responsibilities, institutions can better support students in managing both their education and their personal obligations. And the next one is emergency aid. Many college students face financial challenges, as Anthony kind of went through those financial insecurity numbers, and this can affect both their well-being and academic progress. When students struggle to afford basic necessities, even for a short time, they might find it difficult to stay enrolled during periods of uncertainty. Providing that timely support through emergency aid programs can help stabilize students' immediate needs, keep them on track academically, and reduce reliance on high-risk lending options that can lead to long-term debt and a bad debt cycle. Again, Anthony went through how much more prevalent this is among our online student population. So it's important to make sure that they understand those risks. In keeping with that, we'll look at educational experiences. As the credit landscape grows more complex, it is increasingly important for institutions to equip students with the knowledge and tools needed to navigate high-risk credit products. Developing accessible, engaging financial education materials can help students better understand the potential consequences of using products such as credit cards, buy now, pay later services, payday loans, auto title loans. The resources provided to students can clarify things like how interest rates work, what the fees are, the repayment terms, what credit scoring looks like, ultimately enabling students to make more informed and confident financial decisions. By strengthening financial literacy, institutions can help students recognize the risks associated with predatory lending, avoid cycles of unmanageable debt, and develop healthier long-term financial habits. Providing early proactive education also empowers students to evaluate alternative options and manage unexpected expenses responsibly, and build a more secure financial foundation as they go through their education and beyond into their professional journey. And then lastly, work integrated learning. Given that many online learners work full-time and often prioritize their jobs over their educational pursuits, as we saw with almost 3/4 of them saying that they see themselves as workers rather than students, it's essential to intentionally connect their professional and academic experiences. Institutions can support this alignment by expanding the use of credit for prior learning and competency-based education, ensuring that the skills and knowledge students bring from the workplace are formally recognized in the classroom. Institutions can also strengthen opportunities for student employment to cultivate transferable skills that mirror the benefits of work-based learning. Throughout the survey, employment consistently emerged as critical not only for students' financial stability, but also for their ability to participate fully in their education. By fostering stronger synergies between work and school, institutions can better position students to succeed in both areas. So on this next slide here, it's just some dates for our upcoming fall implementation of the wellness survey. We implement our annual student financial wellness survey every fall to institutions across the country. This is our sort of standard, what we've been calling our place-based version of the instrument. We don't have a planned date for another implementation of the online learner version, but would love to hear from online institutions if there is interest in running another implementation and you'd like to be involved. Please reach out. In the meantime, our standard fall implementation is open to all institutions, and you can get more information on our website, and the dates for when things are happening are there on the screen. And then in the next slide is just a quick QR code, takes you to our events page on the Trellis Strategies website. You can register for upcoming events or watch recordings of past events from this website that it takes you to. And with that, I think we will check out questions. So go ahead and get questions in as you're thinking about them. And to start with, I'm going to send this to Anthony, I think. How does employment impact online learners' education?
Yeah, I mean, I think for all of the reasons that we talked about today, I think the answer is massively, and not just in terms of the financial component of it, in terms of being able to pay for attending class or something like that. It's also, being able to afford food and housing and all of those things. I think the thing that was interesting to me in doing this version of the survey was seeing just how important it was to the actual attendance and coursework component. I mean, we talked about that technology security piece for a bit, where several of them said that it was important that they use like a work laptop or a computer. And it wasn't a significant contingent of students, but it really was eye-opening to see that there are all of these ways that we really don't think about where employment is important to a student being able to stay enrolled, whether it's through, accessing technology or getting those workforce experiences, things like that. So I think in doing this, it really was eye-opening to see the extent to which employment matters.
Right. Yeah. And we see support from employers helping some of these students get their education, which is important. And then, as you mentioned, when you were going through the slides, so many of these students say that it is important for them to financially support their family while they're in school. A lot, like almost 3/4 of them. So clearly working is not optional for most of these students.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And then, let's see, another question here. How does financial insecurity impact ability to stay enrolled? So I want you to definitely jump in, Anthony, with some of the other things that we've done with this. But from the survey itself, we see almost 3/4 of students say that they experienced financial difficulties while enrolled. And then of those who said they had experienced difficulties, about half of them said that it impacted their ability to focus on their academics. So that, this is a point in time survey. So we can't really see, how these students who might be struggling financially do later on from this one survey itself. But that question right there kind of gives us some insight into how financial instability can impact their ability to focus and might impact their academics. But Anthony, I know we've done some further work on this.
Yeah, I would just add, we have done some work about, looking at more outcomes-based things based on our responses to this survey. And what we saw is that those students who are struggling financially also struggle just with things like grades, like their GPA, with stopping out, and then also just like in terms of, those other components of their life that we were talking about, prior. But I would say though, there's a lot of research, including some that we've done, that shows that things like retention and completion suffer as a consequence of, say, lower financial aid numbers or just general financial insecurity as well.
Yeah, massively important. Great. Okay, let me check the questions again. So one more, just sort of a broad question. How do online learners' financial challenges compare to place-based learners? And so I know you went through a lot of those stats. And in general, it looks like online learners do have more financial insecurity broadly than this sort of place-based cohort that we were comparing them to. They were more likely to run out of money, have trouble getting $500 in an emergency. They were using public assistance at somewhat higher rates and using those risky credit services that you went through, Anthony. But then again, they seem to also have more financial responsibilities. I mean, I know I keep coming back to the almost 3/4 saying that they feel it's important they financially support their family while they're in school. I think that's such a big responsibility for someone to have while they're trying to, go through and improve their, get an education. And so just having that on their shoulders while they're trying to navigate all that, I think is also tough. But they have that at much higher rates than we see among our place-based students as well.
Definitely. I mean, it's almost unfair to them to compare them to our like traditional college learners in that there's so much on their plates. And from that perspective, I think, tying things like their employment or making opportunities for them to alleviate some of those burdens that really becomes so important, kind of like what you mentioned in some of those implications.
Absolutely. All right. Well, unless we get another question here in just a second, we'll, we did get one. Okay. Have you considered asking how they deal with their depression and loneliness if they're familiar with school resources? We do have a question in the survey that asks them if they are aware that their school are you aware that your school has mental health services, counseling, and whatnot? And I'm not remembering the exact wording of the question offhand, but and so we did ask that, and about, if I'm remembering right, a little over half, 55% or something, said that they were aware of those resources, with the rest saying that they were not. So there is, I think, an awareness issue, and that's something that schools can take away from this as a way to get more information out, make it more clear what's available to students. But we don't specifically ask how they deal with it. We're asking the scales for these, and then do they know if the resources exist from their school? Well, we really appreciate everyone's time here during maybe the lunch hour, depending on where you're at. Hope that you've learned a lot about our online learners, and we hope to do another implementation again at some point and kind of check in on how our online learners are doing. But you will get this recording and the slides, and you can check out the report on our website, trellisstrategies.org, and the Research Hub. And thank you so much. We'll give you back a little more time here this afternoon.